circle this evening, and the pleasure is mine as we have as our guest Steward Ben Wessels, certainly one of the most passionate and knowledgeable people we have in the state of Illinois about racing. We're going to talk about the pylon rule today. The pylons were instituted quite a while ago, about 20 years ago, as a safety feature. The sport obviously very dangerous, high-speed horses, drivers going at fast speeds. We had fatalities, horrible accidents, and the pylons absolutely have been a giant improvement as far as safety.
Well, you're right, Mike, and you mentioned on the reason why. Before the pylons, what we had was a hub rail that was immovable. It was made out of wood or metal, plastic, aluminum, and there was no place for other contending horses to go if there was an incident ahead of them. And in the cases where horses would get hooked up, or a breaking horse, or a horse that would fall, the trailing horses would just have catastrophic injuries that would result in serious injuries and accidents to horses and drivers. So in '91, Maywood Park instituted what's called the non-continuous hub rail rule. And what a non-continuous hub rail is a pylon that's made out of styrofoam. They're about 2 feet tall, and here at Maywood Park, there's over 50 pylons that mark the interior of the racetrack so that the horses are still contesting the distance of a mile, but horses have an option to go inside and outside for the safety's sake.
Now, Ben, obviously safety is a big issue, but the integrity also of conducting the race is also a big issue, especially for the stewards.
Well, you're right, and we love the idea of the improvement of the safety, but with that came issues of how are you going to administer the pylons, what happens if a horse goes inside of a pylon, what if they strike it. So we, on a nightly basis, nearly on every race, we're reviewing the pylons. There's a group of 3 stewards whose duty it is to supervise the running of the races through the rules. Now, the rules in Illinois may be different from other states, and the interpretations of the pylons are always different. So with that said, I'd like to explain that when there is a pylon incident, we will look first to see if the wheel, the left wheel, struck the pylon or if it was inside of the pylon. If the wheel strikes the pylon, the stewards don't view that as a violation gaining an unfair advantage. The driver may be assessed a penalty for striking the pylon because we don't want him to knock him and hit him and so forth, but that doesn't mean that there will be a disqualification. The rub comes in the interpretation of the unfair advantage. So when a left wheel goes inside of a pylon on a turn, the rules in Illinois deem that horse to have gained an unfair advantage by going a shorter distance of ground. If a horse and a driver is inside of one pylon and is lapped on by a contending horse at the finish, that horse will be placed behind the horse that's lapped upon him, and that's the interpretation that we use in Illinois. Now, if he's inside a pylon in a straightaway, that's different than in a turn because he hasn't gone a shorter distance of ground. So we don't view that as a violation unless the driver intentionally drove inside that pylon for the purpose to clear. So that's another interpretation of the rule. So you can see where it gets complex, and we try to deal with it in the best way that we can deal with it, and we have a good grasp on how we're going to do it in Illinois.
Well, Ben, obviously it's a hot-button issue. The horses are faster, and the drivers are safer. I think absolutely it's the greater good.
Well, it's always worth protecting the contestants, and also it provides a better opportunity for the bettors because the horses can contest the race. And when we discuss the pylon, we really never discuss the open stretch aspect of the racing rules, and maybe we'll do another show on that when time permits. But hopefully you get a grasp of these pylons, and when you look at them, you need to know that they do move. In Illinois, we have straight pylons. In some states, you'll see that they're angled or placed differently, and that's why each state is a little bit different in their interpretation. So when you look at the races here in Illinois, that's how we're going to interpret the pylon rules, but in your state and at your racetrack, their state's rules and their track rules will apply.
Fascinating. I know you've got to get upstairs. First half of the double coming up, sir. Thank you very much.
Pick winners, everybody. Thanks for coming out.